shed within its wall, Joe staring ahead without words. Then he stopped abruptly. His expression was unbelieving. Sally almost bumped into him. "What's the matter?" "You had it, Sally," he said amazedly. "You did it! You said it!" "What?" "The touch of genius!" He almost babbled. "Ships that can go up to the platform and not have to come back! Sally, you did it! You did it!" She regarded him helplessly. He took her by the shoulders as if to shake her into comprehension, but he kissed her exuberantly instead. "Come on," he said urgently. "I've got to tell the gang." He grabbed her hand and set off at a run for the bottom of the ramp, and Sally, with remarkably mingled emotions showing on her face, was dragged in his wake. He was still pulling her after him when he found the Chief and Haney and Mike in the room at security, where they were practically self-confined, lest their return to Earth become too publicly known. Mike was stalking up and down, with his hands clasped behind his back, glum as a miniature Napoleon, and talking bitterly. The Chief was sprawled in a chair. Haney sat upright, regarding his knuckles with a thoughtful air. Joe stepped inside the door. Mike continued without a pause. "I tell you, if they'll only use little guys like me, the cabin and supplies and crew can be cut down by tons. Even the instruments can be smaller and weigh less. 4 of us in a smaller cabin, less grub and air and water. We'll save tons in cabin weight alone. Why can't you big lummoxes see it?" "We see it, Mike," Haney said mildly. "You're right. But people won't do it. It's not fair, but they won't." Joe said, beaming, "Besides, Mike, it'd bust up our gang. And Sally's just gotten the real answer. The answer is for ships to go up to the platform and not come back." He grinned at them. The Chief raised his eyebrows. Haney turned his head to stare. Joe said exuberantly, "They've been talking about arming ships with guided missiles to fight with. Too heavy, of course. But if we could handle guided missiles, why couldn't we handle drones?" The 3 of them gaped at him. Sally said, startled, But Joe, I didn't—" "We've got plenty of hulls," said Joe. Somehow he still looked astonished at what he'd made of Sally's perfectly obvious comment. "Mike's arranged for that. Make, say, 6 of 'em into drones, space barges, remote-controlled ships. Control them from one man-ship, the tug. We'll ride that. Take 'em up to the platform exactly like a tug tows barges. The tow line will be radio beams. We'll have a space tow up and not bother to bring the barges back. There won't be any landing rockets. They'll carry double cargo. That's the answer. A space tug hauling a tow to the platform." "But Joe," insisted Sally, "I didn't think of—" The Chief heaved himself up. Haney's voice cut through what the Chief was about to say. Haney said dryly, "Sally, if Joe hadn't kissed you for thinking that up, I would. Makes me feel mighty dumb." Mike swallowed. Then he said loyally, "Yeah, me too. I'd have made a 2-ton cargo possible, maybe. But this adds up. What does the Major say?" "I haven't talked to him. I'd better right away." Joe grinned. "I wanted to tell you first." The Chief grunted. "Good idea, but hold everything." He fumbled in his pocket. "The arithmetic is easy enough, Joe. Cut out the crew and air, and you save something." He felt in another pocket. "Leave off the landing rockets, and you save plenty more. Count in the cargo you could take anyhow." He searched another pocket still. "And you get 42 tons of cargo per space barge, delivered at the platform. 6 drones, that's 252 tons in one tow. Here." He found what he wanted. It was a handkerchief. He thrust it upon Joe. "Wipe that lipstick off, Joe, before you go talk to the Major. He's Sally's father, and he might not like it." Joe wiped at his face. Sally, her eyes shining, took the handkerchief from him and finished the job. She displayed that remarkable insensitivity of females in situations productive of both pride and embarrassment. When a girl or a woman is proud, she is never embarrassed. She and Joe went away, and Sally rushed right into her father's office. In 15 minutes, technical men began to arrive for conferences summoned by telephone. Within 45 minutes, messengers carried orders out to the shed floor and stopped the installation of certain types of fittings in all but one of the hulls. In an hour and a half, top technical designers were doing the work of foremen and getting things done without benefit of blueprints. The proposal was beautifully simple to put into practice. Guided missile control systems were already in mass production. They could simply be adjusted to take care of drones. Within 12 hours, there were truckloads of new sorts of supplies arriving at the shed. Some were Air Force supplies, and some were ordnance, and some were strictly quartermaster. These were not component parts of spaceships. They were freight for the platform. And just 48 hours after Joe and Sally looked dispiritedly down upon the floor of the shed, there were 7 gleaming hulls in launching cages and the unholy din of landing pushpots outside the shed. They came with hysterical cries from their airfield to the south, and they flopped flat with extravagant crashings on the desert outside the eastern door. By the time the pushpots had been hauled in, one by one, and had attached themselves to the launching cages, Joe and Haney and the Chief and Mike had climbed into the cabin of the one ship which was not a drone. There were now 7 cages in all to be hoisted toward the sky. A great double triangular gore had been jacked out and rolled aside to make an exit in the side of the shed. Nearly as many pushpots, it seemed, were involved in this launching as in the takeoff of the platform itself. The routine test before takeoff set the pushpot motors to roaring inside the shed. The noise was the most sustained and ghastly tumult that had been heard on Earth since the departure of the platform. But this launching was not so impressive. It was definitely untidy, imprecise, and unmilitary. There were 7 80-foot hulls in cages, surrounded by clustering, bellowing, preposterous groups of howling objects that looked like oversized black beetles. One of the 7 hulls had eyes. The others were blind, but they were equipped with radio antennae. The ship with eyes had several small basket-type radar bowls projecting from its cabin plating. The 7 objects rose one by one and went bellowing and blundering out to the open air. At 40 and 50 feet above the ground, they jockeyed into some sort of formation, with much wallowing and pitching and clumsy maneuvering. Then, without preliminary, they started up. They rose swiftly. The noise of their going diminished from a bellow to a howl, and from a howl to a moaning noise, and then to a faint, ever-dwindling hum. Presently that faded out too. End of Chapter 7.